herself for the 100th time, are the Emperor's elephant and her faithful slave stranded in this strange and dangerous land when the Emperor himself is 1,000 long miles away in Rome? He struggled to his feet and walked to the bullock cart to collect Bersheba's feed and the little red apples she loved. Gaius and Britta were still asleep among the hay. He smiled down at his son and listened to the soft, regular breathing with a pleasure only a father could know. Gaius was tucked in close to the big slave girl who had been his wet nurse since his mother's death at the hands of the man the world believed was also Caligula's killer. Rufus was one of only 2 people left alive who knew the true story, and that was the way he intended it to stay. In a few minutes, Britta would rise and prepare the oats for their only proper meal between now and nightfall. Within the hour, they would harness the bullock cart and march another 12 miles. It had been like this for a week. A relentless trudge across a rolling landscape of forest and downland as the soldiers of 4 legions sought to bring the tribes of Britain to battle. The whole army, 40,000 men from the furthest corners of the empire, could sense their general's frustration. Aulus Plautius Silvanus had promised his emperor a swift victory, but all he had to show for his efforts were a few burned-out huts and the heads of a dozen British warriors taken in the endless, futile skirmishes that hampered his progress. Rufus gave thanks he was positioned with the baggage train of the 2nd Augusta, in the centre of the miles-long Roman column, and unlikely to be involved in any fighting. He had warned Narcissus that Bersheba wasn't meant for war. Why had he trusted that scheming Greek? The unexpected call to arms had come 2 months earlier, in the sheltered little park by Bersheba's barn on the Palatine Hill. It was the day he'd met Claudius's freedman, when Narcissus had returned from the coast of Gaul, where Plautius had gathered his forces for the invasion of Britain. The balmy days of April had given way to the hard-edged heat of May, and the Mediterranean sun bounced off bone-hard ground and radiated from the gleaming white marble of the great Corinthian columned palaces. Both men's lives had changed markedly since Caligula's death. Rufus was still a slave, but one who held an honoured position in the imperial household. Narcissus was the Emperor Claudius's trusted adviser and wielded the kind of power only granted to potentates. But Rufus knew he tired of the constant demands on him as Claudius's eyes and ears. Tall and bald as a pullet's egg, the ageless Greek looked thinner and more careworn, but his eyes were the same deep azure blue and had lost none of their hypnotic intelligence. "I must be too many people now, Rufus, far too many. Negotiator, diplomat, counsellor, and enforcer, all things to all men," he had complained soon after the Emperor inherited the throne following his predecessor's untimely but well-merited death. "Life was easier with Caligula. At least then all I had to worry about was staying alive." Claudius had honoured Plautius, the irascible governor of Pannonia, with command of the invasion because he was one of the few military commanders he trusted. Aulus Plautius was related by marriage to the emperor and owed his position to that bond. He was renowned as a disciplinarian and legendary for the savagery with which he had put down the insurrections of the mountain tribes under his rule. The soldiers he led were the finest the empire could provide. His shock troops were the elite 20th Legion, 5,000 battle-hardened legionaries who had learned their trade on the Upper Rhine, penning the German hordes east of the river. The 2nd Augusta and 14th Gemina had joined them on the march from their bases further upriver. 9th Hispana travelled furthest, from the upper reaches of the Danube, where they had been headquartered for almost 30 years. The 4 legions were reinforced by auxiliary units, hand-picked for their fighting qualities, cavalrymen from Germany, Thrace, and Gaul, tough little Syrian bowmen gifted by their king, and Batavian light infantry who could swim like otters. It was a mighty force. But there was one problem. The whole army was on the verge of mutiny. The men of the 9th were at the heart of it. They said they refused to leave the known world. The known world, Narcissus spluttered. We have traded with the tribes of Britain for 100 years. The sailors of the invasion fleet know the waters of the south coast better than they know their own. The 9th have been